when we're talking about looking beyond UX, it comes down to testing and hosting, all these issues that we touched upon earlier. We want to look at multiple target devices. I actually like to use real devices and check them out as we're doing development. Don't chase old browsers. Be really sure about that. I hear a lot of things about senior market, and I have discovered that the largest adapters of new technology, though they may not be deep users, are senior. Why senior market? Because that market over 65, they have disposable income and time. They're the ones on Facebook posting pictures of the grandkids and things like that, and they are, this idea that everybody that's old has an old computer is not always true. I know a guy who's 30 years old and he has a 10-year-old computer. I finally gave him an old Mac of mine because it was just too much, because he's a photographer. But you can never tell who's got old and new. But know your demographics. And this one thing to remember, because I had to learn it as a designer. Web design, it's that balance. Adaptability, compromise, you want stability. And you want, as your site to migrate, you want it also to work. When you migrate from a production server to your test server to your production server, they could be two identical servers in terms of things that you and I don't understand in terms of the details, but sometimes things disconnect, and you want to make sure that first of all, don't be surprised if something doesn't quite connect up right, but that's why your plan needs to be that when your site launches, it's all hands on deck for the first 48 to 72 hours. Ready to make whatever fixes need to be done to reconnect our data and site. If you followed all the other steps, by the way, leading up to this, your chances of that happening are very small. And of course, with hosting, you want to have speed and performance. If you're going with a WordPress site, look at WordPress hosts themselves, because they tend to be more supportive. But there are also some pretty good general hosts out there as well that do a very decent job with WordPress. And as we talked about the external threats, you want to protect against those, the people that want to do you harm, hackers, and then of course just out-of-date themes, things that fall apart. Site recovery, as we talked about, redundancy is king, and don't have too many plugins on your website if you can get away with that. Training should be appropriate to each level of user on your site. In some cases, you are everything. You are administrator. But in other cases, you're going to have these different levels, such as editor, author, and contributor, and they're going to need to have their own levels of training. As we descend down the stack, they need less and less items. But the important thing to note is that these are perishable skills. If you only check in and do this once a month, your skill level is not going to be there. So the ability to access training is pretty important. So you can have this better experience with a WordPress deployment and repair and ongoing life with WordPress if you just keep some of the things that we've talked about in mind. Is how it's different from other installations and some of the little nuances that we've discovered along the way, what it can and can't do. And I'm not talking about the aesthetics, I'm talking about what it can solve for you from a business issue. Your theme choices and how those will impact everything. They don't drive everything, but they're a very big part of it. And the things that are good to ask up front that will set expectations. I've shared with you things to watch out for as well. All the things that I've mentioned are based on experience and sometimes painful. But we've lived through it all and had good websites out of them.